Hello, everyone. This is Amit Mishra here. I work for Foxport as a software architect. Topic for today's talk is scaling a playback platform, Infinity and beyond. Before I go into details, here is the agenda for today's talk. Introduction, what is playback platform? What were the challenges I'm going to talk about? And how did we address those challenges? Even before I go into many details and I explain you guys challenges, let me tell you what is the motivation behind this talk. Basically, as I said, that I work for Foxport, and main focus of Foxport and Fox Corporation is mainly to stream live and VOD contents to millions of concurrent users. uh, when we live stream any content, we have different kind of challenges compared to traditional VOD streaming contents. It was a very busy year for us, and based on that, we had our own challenges to handle those. In 2019, we had PBC, NFL, Women's World Cup, and you can count any number of events which you can see had lots of high concurrent users. During Women's World Cup, what we noticed basically that we were having very high traffic. During that time, we saw our current Node.js based platform was doing really good. And we were very confident that this kind of platform can handle any kind of traffic when it comes to live stream contents. Um, but when NFL season started, we saw a totally different kind of traffic pattern, and that time we found that our current platform might be having issue when it comes to support event like Super Bowl 2020. And that time we thought, okay, we might need to rebuild this platform. But rebuilding this platform just before Super Bowl, almost like 2 months before it, was was not a good idea. Um, but did we have any choice? No. Um, the but the good news was, like, we already had written our couple of other platforms like subscription account and all those kind of platform in Golang, and we knew that if we could achieve this, achieve rewriting current platform into Golang, then sky is the limit for us, which we did. But what were the overall challenges? How did we solve all those challenges in a small amount of time? Is the story worth telling to the community and telling to you guys, basically. Before I start, um, what is the playback platform? Playback platform is basically a bunch of backend APIs, which helps us to deliver playback streaming URL. Uh, it helps us to deliver analytics for the clients. Also, related to it helps us to deliver different kind of metadata, which helps to decorate clients like title, description, and different kind of information which you can see. And also it helps to deliver us some ad related details which are very important from client integration point of view. Delivering all these details goes through a very complex process and depends on tons of and external and internal factors, like user subscription, user geolocation, time zone, device configuration, and I can keep counting these kind of things. But in general, if you look into playback platform, it is just group of APIs which helps to deliver the streaming experience for the users. This is how our old system used to look like. You can see there is a client, we have a playback, and we had a kind of monolithic kind of architecture where this particular interface was calling different services. Few of the services were connecting to their own data sources, and few of the services were calling some external services. There are a few services which were dependent on internal services, and this whole kind of process was a kind of I would say sequential kind of process. And then once everything is done, all the calculation is done, it used to deliver the streaming URL, which of course connect to a streaming system to get the actual stream for the particular user. As you can see in this architecture, um, we didn't have much scope to scale this up. Also, you will notice that lots of services has very high dependency on data stores, which was the biggest bottleneck when you want to scale a service for millions of concurrent users. Similarly, you can see like in this classic system, we don't have any way to cache any data, and this was done on purpose actually, because when you live stream contents, you cannot cache content for the users, because live streaming is so dynamic based on the users. As I said, caching content can ruin their experience in case of any game changes happens at the last moment. Similarly, in classic system, everything was, you can see, was very tightly coupled. So if there was any failure, even for the non-critical features, the whole system or whole playback experience might break for the particular user. And you can see these were the overall challenges. Based on that, we also had some additional use cases or the challenges which we wanted to specifically address for our Super Bowl uh, streaming game. There was, the first one was like we had to support at least 8 to 10 million concurrent digital streams, because that's normal in today's world. Everyone is digitally connected, and everyone wants to watch contents on their digital platform, and especially when it comes to Super Bowl, people want to see those magical moments on their own platform. And this is where this was very important, that we could support as many as users we could based on our prior analytics. The second thing which we wanted to address was the Thundering Herd kind of issues, and Thundering Herd could happen for us in two types of cases. One was the app crash itself, and another one was the ad breaks. In case of app crash, basically, this is very common. Like lots of users are joining the stream, and then they are playing the stream. And if any app crashes happens, in that case, all the users are going to basically hit the stream together. They are all going to retry again and again. And if that happens, then you will see the flood of high traffic requests in your backend API, on your backend API, which can bring down your whole system. And this becomes even worse if client keeps retrying the play stream. In that case, you might see even 100x unexpected traffic. So we had to safeguard ourselves from these kind of situation. Another thing is ad breaks. When you enter into the stream, everyone is into the stream and everyone is playing the stream. And if there is any ad marker, all the users are suddenly going to call the same backend API to get their ad related details. During that point of time, any kind of app crash is not good from user experience point of view, or but the issue is like during that point of time, whenever the ad kicks in, all the users are going to hit your backend again, maybe to get any kind of ad related data. So that's another classic problem of Thundering Herd. The next use case which we wanted to handle was like we had to keep our API time as low as we can, because our current API time was like 5 to 6 seconds, which was very bad when it comes to start the playback for particular user. So that was another one. Third one was like for us, like the game extensions. When we live stream any content, these are configured for given time duration, as we have next program scheduled on the stream. But in case if any game goes over time, then we need to reprogram things. And this of course has to be configured or handled gracefully, because once we reconfigured once the game goes over time and we reset everything, our whole caching system might be reset. or whole API responses might be reset from the client point of view. So that can create another thundering herd kind of scenario, which I explained in step 2. Third, after that, another use case we wanted to handle was like multi-CDN support. In order to have faster playback experience, it's a good idea to serve the stream from the nearest location user is in. In order to support this, we needed our API to have this feature. And final challenge we had was like, how do we handle other kind of failure scenario? We could have other kind of failure scenario where our whole cloud region can go down, or where we have only partial failure, but our whole external services stack is went down. Similarly, we could have a scenario where the whole data store itself went down. But in all these kind of scenario, our ultimate goal was to basically keep serving live stream in for the users without impacting or ruining their user experience. How did we address those challenges? As you could see, I was explaining in previous diagram, in classic system diagram, that our services were very tightly coupled, and changing one thing or failure in one thing could cause the failure in whole system. So we decided to go with true microservices approach in this case. We divided our microservices in based on couple of factors. Services which are dependent on external services. We basically started creating a very lightweight Golang proxy services on top of those external services. Second one we consider was like rewrite the features basically which are directly connecting to the data store. Just for those features, just start writing some normal lightweight services, which were again based on the Golang. Another one was like we had the legacy service. Legacy service holded lots of business logic, and rewriting those was those was huge risk. So what we did, instead of rewriting those legacy services, we started building a Golang lightweight proxy service on top of those also, because that kind of provided us a flexibility to add other kind of features, which I'm going to explain you in next slides. The first thing which we could do after dividing those into small true microservices or strategic caching, since serving requests directly from the data store is high risk basically, and it can easily a bottleneck when you want to basically scale your service. So what we did, like for all these internal services, we started adding caching. But as I was explaining you guys, caching a live stream data is a huge risk, and it can ruin your experience easily, especially when the game extension or happens or game goes into overtime itself. Then how did we address that part? We wrote our own caching service basically. And when we wrote our own caching service, we implemented features like leaky bucket cache or a stale cache. In case of leaky bucket, we allowed few percentage of the request to miss the cache, and basically that helps us to keep our cache warm. And similarly, for second layer of the cache, we built our stale cache, where we could rely in case the whole data store goes down. Moving to next slide. You can see this is the next pattern which we try to follow, which is the circuit breaker pattern. And this is a very common pattern, by the way, in microservice world. You can see you can, as the diagram is saying, basically this this pattern allowed us to fail forward, and basically allowed us to use the stale cache in case of major failures. If you look into the circuit pattern definition itself, it basically allows you to build a fault tolerant, resilient systems that can survive gracefully if in case any kind of failure is happening. As part of this, basically, we were able to tune our dependent services based on service failure, service timeouts, and when that happened, or when any dependent service failed, we could retry calling our dependent service, or we could fail forward on our stale cache to serve the response itself, which was very cool. Suddenly we moved from from the pattern where there used to be one external service failure and it used to fail the whole system. That was gone, after putting this together. The next pattern which we thought about adding was like edge gateway throttling. In this case, basically, we throttle throttle the number of requests or each gateway level. As I was explaining you guys, we built lots of Golang proxies on top of the external services and the legacy services. So in case when we knew that these external services could not be scaled up, we through the proxy services we had the way to throttle the request for those kind of services, which basically helped us to save external services from major failure. The next pattern which we tried to follow was uh, basically was the Golang proxy, Golang single flight pattern. Um, Golang single flight is basically we used for high volume of ad and analytics request while game is going on. We could not rely on cache or throttling because high volume of concurrent ad requests generated dynamically. And with that happen, um, there was um, there was no way that we could serve everything from the cache, or we could directly serve from the data store itself. But in this case, we knew that whenever there is a ad triggered from the client side, most of the clients are going to have similar kind of ad request. Since these requests are dynamic, so cache features like leaky bucket could not help. So we decided to have this pattern. But the good part was it in this case, as single flight states, it basically provides you it provides a duplicate function called suppression mechanism, and we knew most of the ad requests are going to be similar, so um, we allowed only one request to go to origin, get the data, warm the cache, and serve rest of the request automatically from the local cache itself. So this kind of pattern basically helped us to go away from the throttling kind of scenario, because if everyone is in the stream and ad is kicking in, and then we started throttling the number of requests, then it might cause the over like playback failure itself, which is a really bad user experience. Based on this pattern, we started thought about our operational mode also, because as I was explaining the failure scenarios, there could be any kind of failure scenarios. We could have the whole region failed, or we could have whole external services failure, or we could have the whole data store failure. And if that happens, then what we had to do? So we came up with like two dynamic operational mode kind of configuration, where we called it like DEFCON 5. It's the term which we took it from, like, army or defense system. It just says like, defense operational readiness. But basically, DEFCON 5 was a normal mode where when we turned it on, it was basically normal mode where all the services are working as normal, but there are few features we turned off just for the major game, through this configuration, which were not important during that point of time. And there was DEFCON 0, where if in case of any major failure happens, like let's say the whole data store is going down or the whole region is going down, then how do we still serve the stream? We could serve the stream in a static manner. So we came up with the idea, okay, if there is a major failure, during that point of time, we will make the decision, okay, if something happens, we will switch to everything static. So, and that was basically DEFCON 0. And based on that, we had this kind of final architecture. You can see um, in in this architecture, um, we have we have clients, we have playback, and the playback is basically proxied by a bunch of different services. Since Golang has very cool concurrency features, we were able to concurrently call most of these services and make the decisions. Also, Golang Golang proxy pattern itself provided us a way to scale our services independently, even though those were depending on other external services. Apart from that, you can see like a few of the services we were able to add cache, and as I explained you, we could serve from the stale cache in case this whole data store was going down. In order to handle this, as I explained to you guys, we had DEFCON mode on. So in case something happened, we could go here and we could just turn on the DEFCON mode, and then it will do its magic basically. And this was dynamic. We didn't have to restart any servers. We didn't have to do anything for this, and it worked for us the way it should be. What were the results? Results was like we had infinitely scalable playback platform. We delivered first ever 4K Super Bowl this year, and it was the most live stream Super Bowl ever. Thank you.